political analyst Brian Sobel standing by to discuss this with me. So Brian, thanks for joining us first and foremost here. It's good to see you. As always, I got to ask, Biden took a mountain of criticism, obviously, after Thursday's performance. How have he and his team weathered all of this criticism? How have they framed that performance in the days since?
First of all, very interesting debate. But one thing that I think has been lacking in the coverage of the actual debate, and it does inform what happened yesterday and today and so forth, is that you saw these two people on the stage. But what hasn't really been talked about, we'll talk about it now, is that under the Biden rules that they set forth, each speaker had a cup of water, a scratch pad, and a number 2 pencil or whatever they wanted to write with. We did not see teleprompter or cue card Joe. He does very well when he's able to read, but what we saw a couple of days ago was somebody who could not refer to notes or could not read the teleprompter. They were not available to him. And I think that the Biden people left him wide open in that debate. So the next day, when it was being reported how vigorous he was in his campaign rally the next day, well, the teleprompters were going, and he could read right off the teleprompters. And conversely, Donald Trump gave a rally, as you noted, Austin, and spoke extemporaneously for, in my view, way too long. But you could see the vast difference between these two individuals.
You know, Brian, we were watching so much of the reaction to this thing, and one caught my eye yesterday. I'm going to pull up this full screen here. The New York Times editorial board is calling on President Joe Biden to leave the race in light of his performance. It was released on Friday, the editorial. I want to read an excerpt saying, "The president appeared on Thursday night as the shadow of a great public servant. He struggled to explain what he would accomplish in a second term. He struggled to respond to Mr. Trump's provocations. He struggled to hold Mr. Trump accountable for his lies, his failures, and his chilling plans. More than once, he struggled to make it to the end of a sentence." So the board wrote this scathing editorial, Brian. I get breaking news push notifications from the Times on my phone. They never push out editorials, but this one went straight to my home screen. They wanted to get this message out. If Biden gets pushed out, who are going to be the types of voices that can create enough pressure to move the needle? Would the Times be up there on that list for you?
It would be one of them. But if the president decides, and only he can decide, or his insiders with him can decide to leave the race and thus have an open convention, he is going to be listening to many voices, the New York Times editorial board being one of them. But I think, first and foremost, I think the First Lady, Joe Biden, would have to come to the conclusion that she does not want to see her husband go forward as he did in that debate, and just in general. Every time the president is caught, again, without notes, without a teleprompter, so in situations where he just has to speak off the cuff, he's lost. And it was so evident in the debate. So the voices are going to be his wife, are going to be leading members of the party. To some extent, the media that has so supported him for so long, the CNNs, the MSNBCs, the New York Times, Washington Post, and others, all of these voices saying, hey, this kind of performance guarantees that Donald Trump will be elected again. And if that's the case, they have to take a really hard decision about what they're going to do. And I happen to know, or I think we all know, but I happen to know from voices on the Democrat side of the aisle, that there's a lot of pressure right now to evaluate this and decide whether he's the one you want going forward.
Yeah, the word panic was floating around quite a bit the past 48 hours.
Yeah.
Does it seem like debate number 2, this was the first of 2 debates, does it seem like the second one, which is scheduled to be hosted by ABC News in September, does it feel like that debate is a sure thing after this week? Could the Biden camp look at Thursday and say, hey, we need a chance at redemption here in September, or is that too risky?
I don't know that they have a choice. I think they have to come back and say, hey, we will debate. So ironic, Austin, that in this case, these were the Biden rules. This was the Biden early request because they wanted to push the president out there and demonstrate that he is fit for office, full of vim and vigor and all of that. And he did just the opposite. So the next debate is a real calculation. And don't forget, he has an opponent. His opponent could say, hey, the president did so poorly in the first one, I don't even want to talk with him again because we're going to get the same sort of performance, and I don't think that benefits the American people. But it really will come down to, I think, the Biden insiders and Biden advisors saying, hey, maybe we can rescue this, and maybe we can change the rules a little bit. Maybe we can have him refer to a notebook or a cheat sheet or something that can help him, because it was really, in a word, abysmal the other night. It was sad, is what it was. I used to chat with the president when he was in the United States Senate. The fellow I chatted with years ago, who knew every district in the United States, he'd haul down a tourist. Where are you from? Tourist would say, wherever they were from, he'd say, oh, yeah, your representative is X. And he'd go on about that. That's not the same fellow we saw the other night. That train has left the station. And gosh, they need to think more about Joe Biden, the man, than Joe Biden, the president. But it does require that they have somebody in waiting to take his place.
And that's what I wanted to get to next. How difficult would it be to remove Biden and replace him with somebody else at this point in the process? What would the mechanics of that even look like? I assume there's no real precedent for this.
No, but I think all the experts on the rules of the Democrat Party and that sort of thing say that the only person who can make that decision is the president. The president could say, I choose not to run. That would open the convention. It would release the delegates that are pledged to him through the process that has occurred in the primaries. And then it would become an open convention. At that point, Austin, kind of, everybody's free to jump in. And but I think Democrats, frankly, like Gavin Newsom, who was at the debate and in the spin room talking about how well Biden did, somebody like a Gavin Newsom could be pushed forward by his party to become that replacement. There are others, but I don't know how many are on the short list.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question, and forgive me if you already addressed this in full, but I am curious, who comes to mind for a replacement for Biden? Obviously, it has to be somebody who has national appeal. Who would be on a short list? Do we have any good guesses at this point?
No, not really. But I throw out one name as somebody who's been going around the country, who debated Ron DeSantis on television, national television, who was in the spin room, who declared that he was totally behind the president. He would not encourage to leave the race. Those are all words that sound like somebody who is trying to play the game correctly, but would reluctantly, I put that in air quotes, accept the nomination for president.
And I would assume you're talking about California Governor Newsom.
Yes, I should have said Gavin Newsom. Yes, absolutely.
My question about Newsom is he's the governor of California. Does a California politician have national appeal?
This is the real open question. We see a lot of polling. He doesn't do well in California, but sometimes you're not a prophet in your own land. So being out in the country, he may have pockets where he does very, very well, but the polling isn't great on a national level for him. And he isn't going to play any better than Joe Biden in the red states. And he's going to have to make his case really, really quickly in those swing states. So the Democrats have a real problem on their hands. They're either going to push forward President Biden, who everybody could see was having problems the other night. I saw one poll that declared Donald Trump the winner by a 60-40 spread. But the key thing in the poll was that how many people would change their vote. So that was one thing to say, hey, Donald Trump clearly won the debate, and Joe Biden clearly did very, very poorly. But would you change your vote? And on that question, only a couple of percent said, hey, they'd swing over to Donald Trump in that one poll. Swing over to Donald Trump. and move away from their candidate, Joe Biden. So these are all complicated questions, and on it, the fate of the election rests.
Yep, and the two men are hitting the campaign trail as we speak. Like I said, we saw Trump in Virginia yesterday. I believe Biden has more event. He was in North Carolina yesterday, and I believe he was making swings through New Jersey and New York today. We'll leave it there for now, Brian. As always, appreciate your analysis. Take care.
Absolutely. Have a great weekend.